The morning sun rose over New Busan, casting long shadows across the colony's gleaming buildings. 8-year-old Hannah Park stood at her bedroom window, watching the twin moons sink below the horizon. She pressed her small hand against the transparent steel, counting the seconds until she could go outside. Her father, Dr. Jai-ho Park, was already awake in their kitchen unit, preparing breakfast. The smell of rice and soup filled their apartment on the 42nd floor of Tower 7. "Hannah, breakfast is ready," he called out, setting down 2 bowls on their small table. Hannah ran to the kitchen, her dark hair bouncing in its neat ponytail. "Dad, can I go to the fields today? The baby crystal deer are coming out of their nests." Jae-ho smiled at his daughter's excitement. As the colony's lead xenobiologist, he understood her fascination with the local wildlife. "Remember the rules?" he asked, watching her stuff rice into her mouth. "Stay within the safety fence, keep my comm unit on, and don't touch anything without scanning it first," Hannah recited between bites. She had memorized these rules long ago. Outside the park's apartment, New Busan buzzed with its usual morning activity. The colony had grown significantly in its 15 years, now home to over 50,000 people. Transport pods zipped between buildings, carrying workers to the research centers and farming zones. In his laboratory 30 floors below, Jae-ho studied the latest readings from the wildlife monitoring stations. Hannah sat nearby at her usual spot, drawing pictures of the crystal deer she loved so much. The local name came from their translucent skin that sparkled in sunlight. "Look, Dad." Hannah held up her drawing. "I gave this one a name. She's called my sun because she sparkles the brightest." Jae-ho was about to respond when his screen flashed red. Strange energy signatures appeared at the edge of their solar system. He frowned, double-checking the readings. In 15 years of colonial research, he had never seen patterns like these. The colony's warning system activated with a soft chime. "Attention all citizens," announced Sun Mi Lee, the colony leader. "We are tracking unusual activity in the outer system. Please continue your normal activities, but stay alert for further announcements." Hannah looked up from her drawing. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Just some strange readings, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about." But Jae-ho felt uneasy. He sent a message to Earth Command, attaching his analysis of the energy patterns. The response came faster than he expected. "Unknown psi gene a to arditas, may teach nanomin species. Maintain obc arvation. Flee t on sta and dvy." As afternoon approached, more colony residents noticed the tension in the air. The usual busy sounds of the city seemed muted. Parents began picking up their children early from the education centers. Transport pods moved more quickly between buildings. Hannah noticed none of this. She was focused on her latest discovery. A small crystal deer had wandered close to the laboratory's observation window. "Dad, look, it's my son." She came to visit. Jae-ho watched his daughter wave at the creature, her face glowing with joy. The deer's translucent skin scattered rainbow patterns across the laboratory floor. For a moment, everything seemed peaceful and normal. Then all screens in the colony turned red. "Emergency alert." Sun Mi Lee's voice was tense now. "Unknown vessels approaching. All citizens return to residential units immediately." "This is not a drill." "Repeat. All citizens return to residential units immediately." The crystal deer bolted away from the window. Hannah pressed her hand against the glass, watching it disappear into the fields. She didn't know it would be the last time she would see her alien friends. No one in New Busan knew that this ordinary morning would be their last day of peace. The alien ships appeared in New Busan's sky like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Their massive hulls were covered in strange markings that seemed to glow with a purple light. Colony leader Sun Mi Lee stood at the command center's window, watching as 5 ships positioned themselves above the city. "They're broadcasting something," said her assistant, typing quickly at the main console. The message came through in a deep, rumbling voice that made the speakers crackle. This system belongs to the Vore Empire. You are trespassing. You have one standard rotation to begin evacuation procedures. Sunma straightened her back and pressed the broadcast button. This is Colony Leader Sunmi Lee of New Busan. We are a peaceful settlement. This planet was empty when we arrived 15 years ago. We request diplomatic talks. In Tower 7, Jae-ho held Hana close as they watched the ships through their apartment window. "Dad, they look like angry storm clouds," Hana whispered. She clutched her drawing of my son, a crystal deer, tightly in her hands. The colony's warning sirens began to sound. "All citizens must stay in their homes," Sunmi's voice announced. "We are attempting peaceful contact with our visitors." But Hana wasn't listening anymore. Through their window, she saw something that made her heart stop. A group of crystal deer were trapped outside, pressing against the research center's fence. Among them was a small one that sparkled brightly in the strange purple light of the alien ships. "My son," Hana pulled away from her father. "Dad, they're scared. We have to help them." "Hana, no, we must stay inside." But Jae-ho's words came too late. Hana had already run out the door. She knew all the quick ways through the building from her many trips to the laboratory. In the command center, Sunmi was still trying to negotiate. "We have children here," she explained to the Vore ships. "We need time to organize any evacuation safely." The Vore commander's response was cold. "Your presence is an insult to the Empire. We will give you one demonstration of our power, then you will understand that we are serious." Jae-ho ran through the halls of Tower 7, following Hana's small figure. She was faster than he remembered, driven by her concern for the animals she loved. He saw her burst out of the building's lower entrance, running toward the research center's fence. "Hana, come back," he shouted. Above the colony, one of the Vore ships began to glow. Sunlightly watched in horror as a beam of energy formed at its front. "They're powering weapons. All citizens take cover immediately." Hana reached the fence. My son and the other crystal deer crowded around her as she opened the emergency gate. "Quick, go to the forest," she told them, just as she had seen her father do during storms. The Vore ship fired. They claimed later it was meant to be a warning shot, targeted at an empty field. They claimed their targeting systems had malfunctioned. They claimed many things. But the energy beam struck the research center's power core. The explosion lit up the evening sky like a second sun. Jae-ho was thrown backward by the blast. When he could see again, the research center was gone. In its place was a smoking crater. And at its edge, where his daughter had been standing, there was nothing left. The crystal deer scattered into the forest, their transparent bodies reflecting the fires that now burned across New Busan. My son, the small deer Hana had named, stopped at the forest's edge and let out a cry that sounded almost human. Above, the Vore ships waited in silence, not realizing that in trying to demonstrate their power, they had just sealed their empire's fate. They had killed a human child. Admiral Ta-won Kim stood in Earth's Central Command, his eyes fixed on the main screen. The footage from New Busan played again. A small girl opening a gate for frightened animals. A flash of light. Then nothing. The room was silent except for the soft hum of computers. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Behind him, 28 fleet commanders watched with clenched fists. Some had children of their own. All of them had seen war before, but never like this. Meanwhile, in what remained of New Busan, Jae-ho Park sat in an emergency shelter. His hands were bandaged from trying to dig through the hot rubble. Other colonists had to pull him away from the crater. Now he sat staring at Hana's last drawing, the one of my son, the crystal deer. The paper was crumpled and stained with ash. "Dr. Park." Sun Lee sat beside him. Her uniform was dirty, and her eyes were red. "Earth Command wants to speak with you." On the shelter's main screen, the Parliament members appeared. 100 faces looked down at Jae-ho, waiting for him to speak. He held up Hannah's drawing. "My daughter." His voice broke. "She was 8 years old. She died trying to save animals she loved. She never hurt anyone." Tears fell onto the drawing. The Vore didn't even apologize. They said it was a malfunction. The Parliament was silent. Then one member spoke. "Dr. Park, we've seen the footage. Every human colony, every ship, every station has seen it. We're voting now on our response." In orbit above New Busan, the Vore ships remained. They had sent a message saying the colony had 20 more hours to evacuate. They didn't understand why their communications were being ignored. Back on Earth, Admiral Kim received the Parliament's decision. It was unanimous, something that hadn't happened in 50 years. He pressed a button on his command console. "This is Admiral Taiwan Kim to all Earth fleets. Activation code, Children of Earth." His voice carried to every human ship in space. "I say again, Children of Earth." Across the galaxy, 7 massive fleets began to move. Ships that had been hiding in nebulas powered up their engines. Stealth vessels appeared out of nowhere. Defensive stations transformed into battleships. The first fleet, led by Admiral Kim himself, was the largest, 1,000 ships strong. It began its jump toward New Busan. The second fleet, hidden near the Horsehead Nebula, moved to cut off Vore supply lines. The third through 7th fleets, spread across human space, converged from all directions. In the shelter, Jeho watched as Earth's ships began appearing around New Busan. They came in waves, their hulls gleaming with new armor. Each one carried Hannah's picture on its side, a small girl with a bright smile, feeding a crystal deer. Admiral Kim's voice echoed through every ship and colony. "The Vore Empire has committed an unforgivable crime. They took one of our children. Now they will learn why humans protect their young so fiercely." The Vore ships finally realized something was wrong when their sensors overloaded. Human vessels surrounded them in a sphere of steel and fury. Their commander quickly sent a message to his empire. "The humans are reacting strangely to our warning shot. Request immediate." He never finished the transmission. The first fleet opened fire. In the shelter, Jeho looked at his daughter's drawing one last time. Then he stood up. "I want to help," he told Sunmei. "I know Vore biology. I know their weaknesses." "Then come with me," she said. "Admiral Kim wants to see you." Above them, Earth's fleet turned New Busan's night into day. The war had begun. Captain Yuna Choi sat in her stealth ship's command chair, watching her crew prepare for battle. The Silent Shadow was the newest ship in Earth's fleet, painted with special coating that absorbed light and scanner signals. On its side, like all Earth ships now, was Hannah's picture. "Captain," her sensor officer called out, "Admiral Kim's fleet is in position. First wave is ready to jump." In the flagship Justice, Admiral Kim stood with Jeho Park at the main tactical display. Colored dots showed their ships spread across space like a giant net. The Vore Empire's territory glowed red on the map. "Dr. Park," Admiral Kim said softly, "your research on Vore biology is complete." Jeho nodded. He looked different now, thinner, older, with eyes that had seen too much. Their bodies can't handle certain sound frequencies. Their ships use the same biological technology. The right sound wave could shut down their whole fleet. The Admiral turned to his weapons chief. "Can we modify our sonic cannons?" "Already done, sir. Every ship in the fleet carries the new frequency. We're calling it the Hana wave." In her stealth ship, Captain Yuma received the new weapon data. She was young for a captain, only 30, but she was the best at hidden attacks. Her crew worked quickly to adjust their weapons. "This is for the little girl," her weapons officer said as he finished the changes. Everyone nodded. They had all seen the footage. None of them would ever forget. The Vore Empire was having a normal day. Their border patrols moved in regular patterns. Their leaders met to discuss the small problem at New Busan. They expected the humans to run away after their show of power. They were wrong. "First wave, begin," Admiral Kim ordered. Captain Yuna's stealth squadron moved first. 20 ships, completely invisible, slipped past Vore border stations. They carried special sensors that Jaiho had designed, looking for Vore weak points. Behind them, the First Fleet prepared to jump. 1,000 ships, their engines glowing blue, lined up in attack formation. Admiral Kim stood at his command window, watching them. "Sir," his communications officer called. "Message from Earth. The 7th Fleet reports ready. All fleets are in position." Jaiho looked at the tactical display again. Thousands of human ships surrounded Vore space. It reminded him of how the crystal deer would circle together to protect their young. Now humanity was circling to avenge one of theirs. Captain Yuna's voice came through the command channel. "Stealth squadron in position. We've found their main defense network. Sending targeting data now." The Vore still didn't know anything was wrong. Their first warning came when 20 of their border stations suddenly went silent. Captain Yuna's ships had struck with perfect accuracy. "All fleets." Admiral Kim's voice was calm. "Execute Operation Child's Justice. No mercy." 1,000 ships jumped into Vore space at once. The flash was so bright it looked like a new star being born. The Vore patrol ships had only seconds to react before the Hana wave hit them. The sound was silent in space, but inside Vore ships, it was chaos. Their biological technology screamed and shut down. Their weapons failed. Their engines died. "First wave successful," Captain Yuna reported. Her stealth ships were already moving to their next targets. "No casualties on our side." Admiral Kim nodded. He looked at Jaiho, who stood watching the Vore ships drift helpless in space. "This is just the beginning," the Admiral said. "They will learn what it means to harm a human child." The gathering storm had finally broken. Now came the thunder. The Vore Empire had never lost a battle in 300 years. Until today. Captain Yuna's stealth ships struck like invisible knives, cutting through the Vore defense lines. The Silent Shadow led the attack on their biggest military base in the sector. On her main screen, she watched Vore ships try to fight enemies they couldn't see. "Hana wave ready," her weapons officer said. "Fire." The wave hit the base. Vore soldiers fell to their knees as their biotech armor stopped working. Their mighty warships turned into floating metal boxes. The proud Vore Empire was learning a hard lesson about human anger. On the Justice, Admiral Kim watched the battle map fill with green dots of victory. "Second wave, begin," he ordered. His voice was tired but firm. They had been fighting for 3 days without stop. Jaiho worked in his new laboratory on the flagship. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Hana running toward the crystal deer. But his work was helping win the war. He had just finished a new discovery about Vore biology. "Admiral," he called through the ship's comm. "I found something. Their bodies can't handle cold temperatures. Their blood freezes easily." Admiral Kim smiled for the first time in days. "Send the data to Captain Yuna's squad." The stealth ships quickly loaded their new weapons with freeze rays. The Vore never saw the cold coming. Their ships turned into ice balls floating in space. Inside, the Vore soldiers froze in their seats. But not everything was going as planned. A young officer ran into the Admiral's command room. "Sir, the Vore are destroying their own cities as they retreat. They're killing their own people." On the main screen, they watched Vore cities burn. The Empire was choosing to destroy everything rather than let humans capture it. Admiral Kim's face turned dark with anger. "They kill their own just like they killed our child," he said. "Send in the 3rd Fleet. Save as many civilians as we can." Captain Yuna received new orders. Her stealth ships would now protect Vore civilian ships trying to escape their burning worlds. As she watched families flee their homes, she thought about Hana's story. One death had started this war. How many more deaths would end it? On a frozen Vore battle station, Jaiho walked through empty halls with a research team. They found Vore children's drawings on some walls. They showed families and pets, just like Hana's pictures. Jaiho touched one of the drawings with a shaking hand. Sir, a soldier asked. Are you okay? They're just like us, Jai-Ho whispered. They love their children too. What are we doing? But then he remembered the Vore commander's cold voice, the casual way they had fired on New Busan, how they never said sorry for killing his daughter. His heart hardened again. Keep searching, he ordered. I need more samples. Back on the Justice, Admiral Kim received news that made him sit down heavily in his chair. The Vore Emperor is asking for peace talks, his communication officer reported. No, the Admiral said. Not yet. They haven't learned their lesson. He opened a channel to all ships. This is Admiral Kim. The Vore think we will stop because they ask nicely. They are wrong. They didn't stop when we asked nicely. They didn't stop when a little girl was in their way. So we won't stop either. The First Fleet moved deeper into Vore space, their ships carrying both weapons and memories of a child who once loved crystal deer. The Empire was beginning to fall. Captain Yuna couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Vore civilian ships her team had saved. The children's faces pressed against windows, watching their homes burn. She sat in her captain's chair on the silent shadow, looking at Hannah's picture. Captain, her second-in-command said softly, the refugee ships are asking for more food. Give them everything we can spare, she answered, even if it means we eat less. On the flagship Justice, Admiral Kim received reports from all fleets. The Vore Empire was breaking apart. Their mighty ships now ran away when human vessels appeared. Their soldiers surrendered as soon as they heard the Hana wave charging up. But victory felt heavy. Jai-Ho worked in his lab, studying new Vore samples. His hands shook as he looked at their blood under microscopes. Each drop told him new ways to hurt them, new ways to make them suffer. But lately, his dreams had changed. Instead of seeing Hana die, he saw her crying at what he had become. Dr. Park, a young soldier, interrupted his thoughts. We found something in the last Vore city. You should see this. The soldier handed him a small tablet. On it was a Vore news report from the day they attacked New Busan. The translation was rough, but clear enough. Border commander executed for unauthorized attack on human colony. Emperor condemns action. Full apology being prepared. Jai-Ho sat down hard in his chair. They had tried to apologize, but Earth's fleets were already attacking by then. The Vore couldn't send the message through the battle. Does Admiral Kim know? He asked. Not yet. Sir, you're the first. In her stealth ship, Captain Yuna received new orders. The First Fleet was moving toward the Vore homeworld. The final attack would begin soon, but first she had to escort more refugee ships to safety. A small Vore child stood at a window as her ship passed by. The child held up a drawing. It showed human and Vore people holding hands under a peaceful sky. Captain Yuna made a decision. She opened a channel to the Justice. Admiral, she said, her voice firm. I need to show you something. The refugee children, they're drawing pictures, just like Hana did. Admiral Kim stood at his command window, watching stars pass by. The weight of command had never felt heavier. How many refugees have we saved? He asked. 10 million, sir. Mostly families, mostly children. Jai-Ho burst into the command room, holding the tablet. Admiral, the Vore tried to apologize. They didn't want this war. The Admiral looked at Hannah's picture on his wall, then at the tablet showing the Vore news, finally at the tactical display showing Earth's fleets surrounding the Vore homeworld. One order from him would end the Vore Empire forever. Hannah, he whispered, what would you want us to do? In his mind, he saw her again. Not from the tragic video, but from an earlier recording. She was teaching a crystal deer not to fear humans, showing it that different species could be friends. Send a message to all fleets, he ordered. Operation Child's Justice is entering its final phase. But this time, he paused, looking at the refugee ships on his screen. This time, we show them what humanity's real strength is. Sir, Jai-Ho asked. Our strength isn't in how well we kill, Admiral Kim said. It's in how well we can forgive. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. That's what makes us human. The message went out to all ships. The final battle would not be fought with weapons, but with something much stronger. Mercy. The Vore homeworld hung in space like a bright blue jewel. Around it, Earth's mighty fleet waited in perfect formation. But their weapons were cold, their HFY waves silent. Instead of destruction, they'd brought something the Vore didn't expect. Hope. Admiral Kim stood in his dress uniform before the Vore Emperor. They met on neutral ground, a space station halfway between their fleets. Captain Yuna's stealth ships guarded the meeting, visible for the first time in the war. You could destroy us, the Vore Emperor said. His voice shook. Why don't you? Because of her. Admiral Kim showed him HFY's picture. She died trying to save animals she barely knew. She showed more wisdom than all of us. Jiho walked into the meeting room. He carried a small box. Inside was a crystal from New Busan's fields, taken from where the crystal deer used to play, where HFY used to laugh. Your commander killed my daughter, Jiho said to the Emperor. I wanted revenge. I found all your weaknesses. I could tell Admiral Kim how to make your whole species suffer. The Emperor lowered his head in shame. But, Jiho continued, HFY would hate that. She believed all life was precious, even alien life. Even life she didn't understand. He opened the box. The crystal inside glowed with all colors of the rainbow, just like the crystal deer HFY loved. This war ends today, Admiral Kim declared. Not with violence, but with understanding. We call it the HFY Accords. On screens across both empires, humans and Vore watched their leaders sign the peace treaty. But it was more than just peace. It was a promise to learn from each other, to protect each other's children, to never let anger drive them to war again. 1 year later, on New Busan, Jiho stood in a new building. The HFY Foundation for Interspecies Understanding was opening its doors. Through its windows, he could see human and Vore children playing together in the fields. Captain Yuna had retired from the fleet. Now she taught at the Foundation, showing young Vore how to operate stealth technology for science missions instead of war. In the fields, crystal deer had returned. They no longer ran from people. A small one, sparkling brighter than the others, approached a group of playing children. A young Vore girl reached out carefully to touch it. That's my son, Jiho told her with a smile. She was my daughter's favorite. Admiral Kim visited sometimes. He had refused promotion to fleet commander, saying he'd seen enough of war. Today he watched Vore and human scientists working together in the Foundation's labs. We could have destroyed them, he said to Jiho. Many wanted us to. That would have been easy, Jiho replied. Peace is harder. Understanding is harder. But it's what HFY would have wanted. They stood together, watching the children play. Above them, Earth and Vore ships patrolled together, protecting their shared space. The HFY wave weapons had been destroyed. In their place, the technology was modified to help ships communicate across vast distances. Every year, on the anniversary of HFY's death, crystal deer gathered at the Foundation. Nobody knew how they remembered, but they came. Vore and human children would sit quietly, watching them sparkle in the sunlight. And if you looked carefully, in the evening light, you might see a small figure among the deer, a little girl with a bright smile, finally at peace. The war was over, but HFY's legacy of love, forgiveness, and understanding was just beginning. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't destroying an empire. It was building a better one.